Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. We'll open up the phones here in just a little bit, see what you want to talk about. Let me just close the loop to finish that letter that was posted on our Focal Point Facebook page by Vince Manili, who's resigning his position as Assistant Scoutmaster. He said this is how he concludes the letter. So after 40-plus years of personal involvement in the scouting program and over 60 years of family involvement, it seems only fitting that our family will put our uniforms away with mothballs after we participate in the flag ceremony at our local cemetery on this Memorial Day. So he's out of there. He wore the scout uniform for the last time yesterday, going into mothballs, and I anticipate that's going to happen over and over again across the fruited plain. So again, this action, we're probably going to send this out tomorrow to everybody involved in scouting, pull out of the Boy Scouts of America and pursue an alternative. Now let's talk about some other contemporary events that you're reading about in the news. Let me talk about a couple of things very quickly before we jump into this IRS business. There are 4 investigations right now, 4, count them, on Capitol Hill right now into various forms of misconduct by the Obama administration, Obama officials, including an investigation into whether Eric Holder committed perjury. And there's no question in my mind he did. He committed perjury. He took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before Congress, and he lied through his teeth because he was talked to about this business of them monitoring the phones of James Rosen of Fox News, monitoring the phones of his parents criminally, went after his parents, went after other Fox News journalists, other Fox News lines. And Eric Holder said, that's not the kind of thing that I would ever do. It's not the kind of thing that would ever cross my mind. It's not the kind of thing that I would ever pursue. It's not the kind of thing that I would ever support. And now we're finding out that not only did he know about it, when he said he didn't, I had no idea this was going on. I didn't know about it. I wouldn't have approved of that, not on my watch. Not only did we find out that he knew about it, he was the one that signed off on the warrant for those phone records personally, signed off on it himself, then turned around and told Congress, hey, I would never do anything like that. Not in my entire life would I ever do anything like that. And then we found out he had to judge shop. Now, judge shop means you go find a judge that'll give you the ruling that you're looking for, which, again, you should never have to do that in America because it's equality under the law. We believe in the rule of law. If we had a functioning judicial system, every judge would rule the same. No matter what the case was, they'd base it on the evidence. They would base it on the law. They would base it on the Constitution, and their rulings would be consistent, like you get in baseball. Doesn't mean you don't have an umpire that blows a call every once in a while. Had one the other night, blew a call on a double play ball. It was a relay to first base, and the pitcher was moving toward the bag, and he was the one that caught the ball. So the ball was caught, but it was the first baseman that had his foot on the bag, and the umpire was looking at the feet, listening for the sound of the ball in the glove, heard the ball hit the glove, and called the runner out, but the guy that caught the ball was right in front of the first baseman, but his foot wasn't on the bag. So you can have mistakes like that can happen. There's no question about it. Umpires aren't perfect. Judges aren't going to be perfect. But you watch one ball game after another in the major league, and you're going to find that those umpires are pretty consistent in their calls. They know the rules. They apply the rules. They know their job's on the line if they don't. So they have a high degree of incentive to be impartial in the way they call the game. So you shouldn't have to judge shop, but Eric Holder had to go to 3 judges, before he found one who would sign off on his deal. So he is in big trouble and ought to be. I've got a story in here about comparing Obama to Dick Nixon. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Now, speaking back to the issue of the Scouts for a second, the Girl Scouts went lesbian. They went pro-lesbian, I don't know, back in the 90s sometime, and that spawned the American Heritage Girls as an alternative. That's a place that Christian families can go, very similar to the Girl Scouts, only it has not lost its moorings. It still maintains its traditional values. Well, the Girl Scouts, Girl Scout cookies, that whole business, they are in such bad shape that they are selling off one campground after another just to stay afloat. Their campgrounds now become a huge financial drain because they don't have enough Girl Scouts to pay the freight. So they're selling them to kind of make ends meet. Same thing happened up in Canada. Canada selling off, and the one thing about the Scouts, they get premier campsites. I mean, up in Idaho, one of the premier campsites probably in all of the Boy Scout deal is right on Payette Lake up there. Beautiful location, absolutely spectacular lake, mountains around it, spectacular location. So they know how to pick those campground facilities and develop them, but they can't afford them any longer. And that's already the Boy Scouts in Canada have seen that happen. The Girl Scouts in America now are seeing that happen, and it won't be long before the Boy Scouts in America see that happen as well. Now, you know about the rush toward same-sex marriage. Now, here's the beautiful thing. Here's the beautiful thing, that there are 12 states now that I believe have legalized same-sex marriage. Now, the pro-homosexual activists are about to run into a major roadblock that is going to slow down this train. That is, they're going to start running into states that don't just have laws that define marriage, but they have constitutional amendments that protect marriage as the union of one man and one woman. 30 states have amended their state constitutions to protect marriage as the union of one man and one woman. I had the privilege when I was in Idaho working for the Idaho Values Alliance of being a co-author of Idaho's marriage amendment. And we did this in concert with the leadership of the legislature in Idaho. In fact, they came to us, said, would you please draft a constitutional amendment? And they invited several pro-family organizations and leaders to the table. They entrusted us with that responsibility. You write the language, whatever you come up with, we'll run with that. So we contacted some attorneys with the Alliance Defending Freedom. We crafted language. After about a month or 45 days of work on that, we brought it to the leadership of the Idaho legislature. They ran that thing through the legislature because that's how it has to happen. And the bar is very high. You have to get 2/3 for a constitutional amendment in Idaho. It's different in every state. But in Idaho, you had to get 2/3 of both houses, both the House and the Senate, to approve of the marriage amendment before it would go to the voters. And then the voters had to approve of it just by a 50% margin. So it was not an easy process. So we had to work with the legislature to give testimony and to provide argumentation and reasons to move this thing forward. But the whole reason, this is back in 2006 we did this, which was a bloodbath for Republicans around the country, but we passed the marriage amendment in Idaho in 2006. And the whole reason for that was because marriage was under assault. And the leadership of the Idaho legislature said, look, we need to elevate protection for marriage to our state constitution. Get it out of the hands of activist judges. We got to get it out of the hands of even our own state Supreme Court. We can't let them monkey with the issue of marriage. We got to give it the maximum possible protection. That's why it was elevated to the state constitution. And a lot of states did that. 30 of them altogether did that. They enacted constitutional amendments to protect marriage because you want to give it the maximum possible protection. Now, here's the deal. Once you amend your state constitution, it is a difficult thing to unamend it. I mean, it can be done. You got to have a way to undo it, obviously, in case you make a mistake. We passed the amendment on prohibition. It turned out to be an unenforceable, turned out to be a bad amendment. And I believe even biblically it was bad because the Bible does not forbid the consumption of alcohol. It forbids and prohibits drunkenness. It doesn't prohibit drinking. It prohibits drunkenness. So drinking is not in and of itself wrong. Drunkenness always is. So the Prohibition Amendment, in my mind, went beyond what the Scriptures authorized. It turned out to be unenforceable, turned out to be bad, and we repealed it 14 years later, and I think it was the right thing to do. But the point here is that amendments can be undone, but it's a lot of work to do it. And so the gay activists now are going to start running into one state after another that's got these constitutional amendments, and they are not going to be that easy to undo. 888-589-8840 is the number to call, 888-589-8840. And just in response to the text message I got from my wife, if you appreciate my effort to bring you information across the entire cultural landscape, talking about carousels and merry-go-rounds and roller coasters, if you appreciate that aspect of Focal Point, I need to hear from you. No, I'm just kidding about that. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Particularly interested in your deal about the Boy Scouts and one other thing you might want to weigh in on. 888-589-8840. Here's something else you might want to weigh in on. We've been talking about the IRS. One of the big scandals right now in in D.C. In fact, I would say probably scandal number one right now. This is the one that probably contains the most threat to President Obama, is the IRS targeting conservative groups, going after conservative groups, hammer and tongs, trying to neutralize them, trying to rob them of funding, trying to suppress the vote. My wife just told me I'm pathetic, by the way. That craven appeal for your support, she thinks, is pathetic. At any rate, so where was I? I distracted myself again. Oh, yeah, the IRS going after these conservative groups. And, we talked with you about the fact that Homeland Security was showing up at these Tea Party events. Grant Sowell, local leader of the Tea Party movement here in the city where our headquarters is located, sent me a picture, put it up on our Facebook page. He's there standing in front, and there it is. If those of you that are watching on video streaming at afr.net, watching on television, you can see it. There's my good friend Grant Sowell standing in front of a Christian flag. And also there is a Don't Tread on Me, the Gadsden flag. So he's standing in front of these two great flags, the Christian flag and the Gadsden flag, and right behind him, you can see it, Department of Homeland Security. So now we know what they're doing with their 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition, what they're doing with their 2,717 light armored tanks. Well, now we know who they are going to use that against. Well, it's us. We are the ones that are in the crosshairs. So this IRS thing is a big, huge deal. And it turns out that the IRS Commissioner, Doug Shulman, he was the guy that was grilled last week. We played you some of the sound bites. Talk about pathetic. That guy's performance was pathetic. This guy, listen to this. Remember that the White House got nervous about the Tea Party in 2010. They really got nervous about him in 2011 because the Tea Party had a lot to do with the bloodbath that the Democrats experienced in 2010. This Doug Shulman visited the White House 118 times in just 2 years. 118 times in 2010, 2011. His successor made numerous visits to the White House. You know how many times Bush's IRS commissioner went to the White House when Bush was president? Once. Count them. Once. 118 times versus one time. Focal Point AFR Talk back in 2.